Good morning again, General.
Morning, ma'am.
Welcome to the rest of our military personnel and any veterans in the room. Thank you for your interest and thank you for being here. You probably noticed my shameless plug for the Indiantown Gap military facility when we were saying good morning the first time. And I do that not just for the outstanding operation that it is, but it is also one of our largest employers in Lebanon County. So that brings me to one of the specific GGO budget lines. If you'll talk to me a little bit about that, it's proposed that there would be an increase of $2 million, that's like 11% increase for very special two initiatives that are identified. And one is $300,000 for information technology enhancements to streamline the payroll processing, as I understand it, for the Guard members, and then $241,000 to provide for enhanced security at Fort Indiantown Gap. And I know you and I talked about that last year at the budget hearing. So if you'll talk a little bit about why it's necessary so that we remind people, and then what kind of security issues still face us out there and where we are this year compared to last, and what this additional funding might do.
Okay. Yeah, yes, ma'am. First, for the security issue, it's a large post, 17,000 acres. It's completely open. Anybody can drive on, drive off. We have done some fencing in very sensitive areas, such as the airfield, some of our equipment maintenance areas and repair areas, but it's still a largely wide open post. There's some $2.5 billion worth of federal equipment we house there, aircraft, vehicles of all type. We have about 1,500 full-time workers there Monday through Friday. On a weekend, you could have 8,000 to 10,000 troops in training there as well. So it's a very busy place. It's our training center where we do practically all our weekend training. It's very, very valuable for us. This addition to the budget that you mentioned adds 8 part-time equivalents or 4 full-time equivalents to our police force, and the police force is run by our state employees. And we have also added 6 military policemen to that patrol force, and we have 6 contract guards, 12 contract guards as well. So by allowing more people on patrol, this allows us, when we have a busy weekend, we can surge our coverage and add more patrolmen there, making the place safer. And also, when we put troops through soldier readiness processing, when they're getting ready to deploy, they're always unarmed, they're always a large group of them together, and you can create a situation like happened several years ago in Fort Hood when that Major Hassan showed up with his gun, and there was a couple hundred troops in there going through medical checks. None of them had any weapons. He just started shooting indiscriminately and killed and wounded a number. That's what I want to avoid. And by having policemen there, before we had this bump up in the police force, literally I'd have 2 on patrol at a time. So if there was a random shooter and he took out the first policeman that got on the ground, the second one would have to call the state police, and that could be 15, 20 minutes, way too long. So this basically allows us to surge and put 4, 5, 6 patrolmen on duty when we have things like that. It is greatly appreciated and very much needed. And I'll just briefly touch on the active duty you mentioned. That's dealing with state active duty. We have when you're put on state active duty and you're a National Guardsman, you become a part-time worker of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for the duration of that emergency only. And so they have to pay you by a hard check because there's no way to electronically funds transfer that. So we generate our own payroll manually by punching it all in. It comes to my Office of Administration, who has to manually redo it again into the state payroll from the federal to the state, and no, the systems don't talk to each other. So this some $300,000 is a study program. We think we have a way where we can actually have the information electronically dumped into the state system, which will eliminate not paying my soldiers and airmen because it went to the wrong address or there's something wrong about it, and it would simplify and streamline the effort completely.
Thank you. I would think that efficiency is very important, so that an excellent use for that funding. And of course, we were horrified thinking about some of the things that could happen last year, and it still concerns me this year, so I'm glad to see that we're increasing some of the security issues. It still doesn't seem like a whole lot of people when you're talking about
it isn't, but if we do a risk assessment, and when we're our riskiest, which is when we have our most people there, and when they're not armed, that's when we surge our police force. It does help a lot. Man.
We look at the Homeland Security side of this. Is there anything else out of that funding, that additional funding? Are there any other upgrades or facility changes that we ought to know about, or are those 2 components going to utilize that money?
Not directly out of that, but using a variety of federal and state funds. We continue to upgrade Indiantown Gap. My goal is in 2 years to have all the barracks that are going to remain, 120 of them, completely renovated. So if you come in there in an emergency, you've got a decent place to stay that has heating and air conditioning in it. We're also doing it'll probably take 3 or 4 years to do all the dining facilities, because everything there, most of the facilities when I got here were brand new as of World War II. And hadn't been touched since. So they were great in World War II, but they need a lot of work, and we are very actively engaged in that. And one last thing about Indiantown Gap: during the emergencies of Sandy and Tropical Storm Lee, we found ourselves thrust into the role of running an intermediate staging base for food and water distribution to communities in the Commonwealth that needed that assistance, usually for 2 weeks, sometimes 10 days. So we're grading a parking lot and building a part of our initiative to build cross-docking docks that we can use out along Range Road, so to make that process flow even better. PEMA came up with the idea, we've endorsed it, and it looks like that's going to be becoming a recurring mission for us. So these improvements will allow that to move even quicker.
Thank you for bringing that up. I didn't think to say that, but the partnership with PEMA is excellent, and we never know when that need's going to arrive, so thank you.
Yeah, we work with PEMA all the time, not only in emergency, but during drills and developing scenarios.